1, go!
Skip it.
That's going to be the intro. It's been a few days now and I'm back in the studio, and now I can go over this epic race with you. It was a great day with some good rivalries, and I also managed to catch up with Mr. Above Average, Mark Lewis himself, and we can also go over the race results at the end and compare them to what I got last year. So it's going to be an epic one. Here's pre-race, and then I'll talk over the race itself. Good morning. I have just woken up, as you can probably tell. It is, what's the time now? We are like 10 to 6 now, and it is race day. I'm just gonna have my breakfast now, which is gonna be a little bit of porridge. I'm not gonna have too much. I ate quite a lot yesterday, and it's quite a short event, so don't want to feel too heavy, don't feel like I need too much. So just a little bit of porridge this morning, and then I'll get my bits and pieces ready, and then we are pretty much off then. I slept pretty well, feel pretty croaky at the moment, but literally just woke up. But yeah, can't complain. I had a pretty decent sleep. I think about 8 hours, which is just awesome. So whilst I wait for that to boil, it is absolutely freezing this morning. I did check the weather forecast, and it looks like it's going to be cold, but hopefully clear and sunny with maybe a little bit of wind, but hopefully not too much. So it's looking like 1 or 2 degrees, which is pretty cold. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to wear. I don't think I can just wear the short sleeve tri-suit. I think I'm going to have to wear a jersey over the top of that, at least for the run, and then if I'm hot, then I'll take it off in transition 1 for the bike. But yeah, I'm pretty pumped. So on the day, we get there in the morning about 15 minutes before the race starts, which I think was spot on for me. The transition closed 15 minutes before the race started at 8 AM. So that gave me plenty of time to rack the bike, get ready, put my bib on, all of that sort of thing. And what I didn't want to happen is be much later and rushing around and scrambling to do stuff. And on the other hand, I didn't want to be too early either, because I didn't want to be hanging around in the cold and also having to get up any earlier than was required. Alrighty, I'm here. It is about 7:10. Time to go register and then rack the bicycle. With it being the first event of the season then, although it wasn't a key race for me really, there was a lot of nerves and a lot of excitement going into this race. Particularly because I had a few friends that I knew that were doing it, PTs, physios, and in particular one of them was out to get me after I smashed him throughout all of the events we did together last year. So we'll see how that turns out in this one. How you feeling?
Nervous.
How you feeling? I'm feeling pretty nervous. Feeling pretty nervous. Some nice bikes right there. You ready, Greg? Yes.
Freaking sick.
There we go, Greg.
Rogue.
You ready?
Yeah, ready.
You pumped up?
Pondered seat.
You gotta show me how to use that thing.
Yeah, I need a wee, sort out the rest of my stuff, and then I'll warm up. So we're about to kick off then, but quickly, here's what I did last time at this event and my goals going into this one. So last time I placed 76th out of 236 people overall, with a finish time of 1 hour and 42 minutes for the 5K run, 20K bike and 5K run. So going into this one, I want it to be faster than that, but I also want it to be a fair bit faster. I wanted to complete this in around 1 hour and 30 minutes. So that was my goal going into this. Now, just a little bit of a spoiler, the bike was the best bit for me, but here we go with the first 5K run.
I'm gonna learn how to use this thing.
Have a great race. Let's give them a cheer as they start their guys on the sidelines. Good luck.
I had a time in mind around 25 minutes for this one, and just any quicker would be a bonus, but I was pretty wary of making sure I didn't, push too hard on the first run and not leave enough towards the end of the race. Start of this run, I quickly realized what sort of pace those around me were running at and who I wanted to be competing with in my head, because I knew I wasn't going to be on the podium. Now, I went into this one competing 2 mates in particular, but also when we turned up, Matt was there, and also seeing Mark show up, I had my eyes on him as well, because I knew roughly how fit these guys were, and that kind of gave me something to push against. Almost a mini race within the race itself, because that was just more meaningful to me, a bit more competitive for me, knowing these guys and also not being anywhere near the podium.
That's a really good idea. Woo! That was mine.
But I actually ended up at the back behind these 4 other guys pretty early on in the race. But I just kept to my pace or slightly above that, trying to make sure that they weren't getting too far ahead and I was still leaving enough in the tank for the bike and the final run. Then coming into transition, I felt really quite strong and I was happy with the run time, but I knew I had some making up to do if I wanted to get near to any of the other guys.
Yeah, he's quite big. I'd like to be the same height as him. Go, go, go!
I think I'm winning.
Oh, my mum's still ringing me. You are.
They're in together, aren't they, out here? That's quite nice.
But fortunately, coming into the transition 1, I was actually not that far behind Tom and I ended up coming out faster out of transition 1 onto the bike than him. So then I just had Greg in front of me, Matt in front of me and Mark in front of me going into the bike. Not that they really know that I'm trying to pick them off. The transition time itself was fairly quick but not rushed. I didn't want to make any mistakes here and then I just wanted to hammer it on the bike. I knew I could make up some time here and it would be a big proportion of the overall time of this event. So the game plan going into the bike was to try and average a speed of 32k per hour, keeping the cadence nice and high and also staying in as aero as possible and using that TT position to make sure I was getting as much free speed as possible and I wasn't just completely ruining the legs. So that way I could get the fastest possible time and save my legs a little bit for the final run. Now we're onto the bike. Having done this course before, I think I was at a little bit of an advantage because I knew what gear I needed to be in and when in terms of the course and when I should be in that tucked TT position and when I should relax a little bit more and try and get more air in, which was mostly on the slight kind of uphills. And it was a non-drafting event and I tried not to get behind anyone really, just really trying to accelerate when I was passing people to make sure I stayed away from them. But there was actually this one guy, we must have been going virtually the exact same speed the entire way around and we must have started at roughly the same point. So that meant it was a little bit tricky. We would keep kind of passing each other, but neither of us would make a big enough gap for us to be able to stay away. So you'll see me kind of coming out and trying to just take a bit of the wind because I didn't think it was fair for me to sit in behind him. I was trying to go in front of him for a little bit. So that made for a pretty interesting dynamic on the bike. And then getting towards halfway, I've really got my eye out for Greg, Matt and Mark at this point, and I keep looking back to see if I can see Tom chasing me down. With it being an out and back route and you go basically all the way along the road and then you come around a roundabout and come straight back on the other side, I know I'm going to see them out in front passing me on the way back at some point. It's just how far away are they?
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
I don't see Tom behind me, and the first person I see coming back on the way back is Greg, and he's a fair bit out in front, and then I see Matt just behind him, but I don't see Mark on the turn back, so he must be fairly close. So I remember thinking at this point, maybe I can catch up with him, and that would be awesome because I'm a big fan of him and his channel, and it'd be awesome just to race with him a little bit on the bike. Now, a little bit into the way back, I see him just ahead. Now, I know he's pretty strong on the bike, so I kind of stay behind him for a little while, and we're going at a fairly good pace. But it gets to the point where I'm thinking, you know, maybe I can take him, but I definitely don't want to overtake him and not be able to maintain it. So I want to make sure I can overtake him enough and just stay away from him. I don't want him to instantly come back round me and then just fly off, because that would just be embarrassing. So I stay behind him for a little bit, and then I look for kind of a flat section, see how the legs are feeling, and at one point I just go for it for about 1K. Love the YouTube videos, Mark.
Take my eyes open to force
And that seems to be enough to keep away from him. And at this point on the bike, I'm feeling pretty pumped because I've passed a lot of people. I've passed Mark, who absolutely smashed me in the run, and I know he's a decent cyclist. So I'm pretty pumped at this point. And then with the final run coming up, I remember thinking the rest of these guys are stronger runners. So I just have to create the biggest gap possible from the guys behind me and get as close to the front two as possible. So I'm really kind of hammering it on the bike. And then towards the end of the bike, I actually passed Matt, another one of the guys. Let's go, Matt. Who was really quick on that fast run, who put a lot of time into me on that. So now at this point, I'm now second out of the 5 of us, and I must be fairly close to Greg because he was quite close to Matt on the turnaround, but I've got no idea how close he was at this point. So this was just awesome after coming last into transition 1. Now I know I've had a really good bike and I managed to overtake a lot of people who put a fair few minutes into me on that first initial run. But have I done enough? Have I made a big enough gap to stay away from them? And then coming into transition 2, Emily, my partner, shouted at me how close I was to Greg, and that as I got into transition, he'd literally just left transition for the final run. But I couldn't see him. I wasn't sure, I wasn't very confident as to how far or how close I was to him. But that was awesome to know that I was literally just on Greg's heels and the rest of the guys were behind me. But then sadly, out of the corner of my eye in transition 2, Matt overtakes me, and now I'm third out of these 5 guys. And I know Greg and Matt, who are coming out of transition 2 earlier than me, I know they've got a better run than me. So now I'm just trying to close the gap if I can going into this last run between those 2, and just trying to stay as far away as I can from Mark and Tom, who've probably got slightly better runs than me. So I get onto the run feeling pretty chuffed with myself, but in the first 500 meters or so, I really started to kind of cramp up in the calves, which made me panic. I knew I was doing pretty well and I felt strong, but the legs really started to seize up. Now, they hadn't fully stopped working in this first sort of K or so, but I massively slowed down to make sure that they didn't fully cramp up and seize up. And then the fluids that I had, I think, finally kicked in. And with that slower first part of the run, I started to slowly feel a little bit better. Again, what was also nice about the run, it was a loop. It was a 2.5K loop, which meant I could see where the other guys were. So I kept looking around to see if I could see Tom or Mark, who could be gaining on me because I know their runs are pretty quick. And I saw Matt and Greg a fair bit further in front, so I wasn't going to catch them after the first 2.5K. So now I'm just going for time and I'm trying to keep that cramp at bay, but also trying to stay away from Mark and Tom, who are chasing me down. Then with about 2K to go, I could see they weren't going to catch me on the way back, which was awesome, and I just picked up the pace all the way to the finish. My legs felt a little bit better at this point. Here I am crossing the finish line, and I actually feel pretty strong at this point crossing the finish line, considering how I felt at the first part of this last run. So let's see what the results were. And when I was picking up my bike, this is where I managed to catch up with Mark. Obviously, he had no idea who I was, and he also had no clue that I was mentally racing him. But him being so tall and him starting next to me and me watching a lot of his videos, I felt like I knew him and I had to kind of race him in my head, and I had to catch up with him at the end. Super zoomed in.
Going out was hilly.
Yeah,
oh.
It was hilly.
Oh, my quad just smoked going out. I mean, it's always embarrassing because obviously I can fly past people on a downhill.
Yeah.
100 kilos on this thing, I just tuck. Yeah. It's like a missile. And then we get to a hill and they all just poodle past me. It's embarrassing. I always feel like I should apologise.
That was the same for me, really, but I'm still probably shorter than you, so but I feel the same sort of thing.
Oh,
the small guys up the hills.
I felt like I was on Swift, literally. It was like, yeah, it was horrible.
So I hope he doesn't mind this, but it also transpires it was a pretty last minute event for him. He didn't realise he had it in his calendar, and he hadn't been on that bike for a little while, and I know that he's training for High Rocks as well. So it wasn't really a fair race, and he had no idea that I was trying to beat him. But there we go. Now let's have a look at the times then. So I completed it in 1 hour and 33 minutes. Now that's basically 10 minutes faster than last time. So really chuffed with that. I'll also put the split times up on the screen, and I came 32nd out of 160th, 5th in my category. I've got no idea how that happened. And 14th overall on the bike, which was awesome. And the runs were obviously slightly slower times. So I can see where I need to work. I'm definitely better on the bike than I am on the running segment. And I now have 6 weeks before a sprint triathlon that both Greg and Tom are doing as well, which is awesome. And with this one involving swimming and slightly less running, I think that one might be even closer to me being a little bit closer towards Greg at the front. Be interested to know what events you guys are doing this year. Let me know in the comments below. I'm always interested to check a few different ones out. I'm not competitive at all by any means in terms of the podium, but it was really nice to have some healthy competition for this and make some progress upon last year. Now, if you want to keep up to my training and you're interested in any of the races I do, then hit the subscribe button. And if you did like this video in any way, give it a like, it massively helps me out. And until my next video, have a really good one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.